Your Worship, all members of council are present this evening except for Councillor Zanko.
Thank you. There's no addendum this evening. A couple of announcements. The first is we're in the midst of high school track and field season, and we had a number of students from Greater Fort Erie Secondary School and Niagara Christian Collegiate who did very well at last week's Zone 3 track and field meet, and they're moving on to SASA, which I believe is this week. Second thing I wanted to speak about was last week a press release was issued out of the town with respect to comments about the situation at the racetrack. And I want to assure everyone that the intent was not to pick sides in the current provincial election. The intent was to speak about the importance of the work that this council and others have done to facilitate the sustainability of horse racing at our Fort Erie racetrack over the past several years. And I want to make it clear that this town administration, the staff, the council does not pick candidates or parties in provincial elections. I personally have been very diligent in making sure that I don't be seen to be favoring one candidate or one party over the other. It's not my role. It's not the role of this municipality to be involved in municipal elections. I don't even attend open houses that candidates hold when they open up their offices. Don't make phone calls, don't canvass, don't participate in any way whatsoever. And I think it should be clear that when we make an announcement here, it's not for political purposes, it's to speak on behalf of an issue of importance to this municipality. So I just wanted to clear the air on that. Are there any disclosures of pecuniary interest? Councillor Butler.
Thank you, Your Worship. IS-20-2018, as the company I work with does business with CRL.
Are there any others? Madam Clerk, I have conflict with or pecuniary interest with respect to public meeting A and report PDS 30 for 2018, both of which relate to Kleiman Hages Garage Limited, since the owner of the property is a client of mine. So I will be asking Councillor Butler to conduct that public meeting on my behalf. If there are no others, that takes us to notices of upcoming public meetings, and there are three. First is a proposed official plan amendment and property rezoning for 260 to 262 Gorham Road / 3854 Disher Street. That will be held Monday, June the 11th, 2018 at 6 p.m. here in the council chambers. The information report for that public meeting will be available on Wednesday, June the 6th, 2018. There's also a public meeting with respect to a zoning bylaw amendment for 1201 Ridge Road North, same evening, June the 11th, same time, 6 o'clock here in the Town Hall Council Chambers. And again, the report will be available on our website Wednesday, June the 6th, 2018. And finally, another zoning bylaw amendment public meeting for 396 Ridgeway Road, again, June the 11th, again, 6 o'clock here in the council chambers. And again, the report will be available on our website on June 6th, 2018. That then takes us to public meetings, and Councillor Butler, if I could, I will pass the chair to you for this particular public meeting.
Yes, thank you, Your Worship. We are going to start with Daryl Vanderveen from the Planning Department to give his address with respect to Kleiman Hages Garage.
Garage Limited, a motor vehicle repair shop. The purpose of this application is to convert the existing motor vehicle repair shop to an automotive service station, an associated retail store, and an eating establishment with a drive-through. This application proposes to change the zoning of the subject property from highway commercial C3 zone to a site-specific automotive service station C4 zone that permits an eating establishment in addition to the already permitted uses of the C4 zone. The proposed zoning will also include several site-specific regulations needed to implement the development plan for the property. These site-specific regulations consist of provisions to reduce the minimum front yard setback and reductions to planting strip widths along the drive-through lane and adjacent to the parking areas in some locations, as depicted on the site plan. Notification of this public meeting was provided in accordance with the requirements of the Planning Act by placing a notice in the April 26, 2018 edition of the Fort Erie Post. Property owners within 120 meters of the subject area were also mailed a notice of complete application and public meeting on the same date. So this is an aerial photograph of the subject property as well as the surrounding area. The subject property is located in the Ridgeway Thunder Bay neighborhood on the west side of Gorham Road, just south of the Fort Erie Friendship Trail. And this is a more zoomed in aerial image of the subject lands. So the lands surrounding the subject site comprise of the following uses. To the north, the Fort Erie Friendship Trail and an existing supermarket. To the south, a small strip of vacant commercial land and an institutional building operated by the District School Board of Niagara. To the east, Gorham Road, the Fort Erie Friendship Trail, and an existing commercial use with a gasoline bar, convenience store, propane refueling station, and car wash bays. To the west is the limit of the urban boundary and vacant agricultural land. The area subject to this zoning bylaw amendment is within the urban boundary and is designated commercial in the Ridgeway Thunder Bay secondary plan. The property is also within an area identified as the Gorham Commercial Gateway in the secondary plan, a traditional highway commercial area that is intended for automotive-friendly development that serves the local neighborhood as well as commuter and visitor traffic to the Ridgeway Thunder Bay neighborhood and Crystal Beach. The proposal to amend the zoning to facilitate development of an automotive service station with an associated retail store and eating establishment with a drive-through is consistent with the land use designation and policies of the Ridgeway Thunder Bay secondary plan. This slide displays natural heritage features in the area. An environmental corridor is identified in the vicinity of the subject property related to the Fort Erie Friendship Trail. Locally significant natural area and a portion of woodlot over 2 hectares are north of the site on the other side of the Friendship Trail. The Niagara Peninsula Conservation Authority has confirmed there are no NPCA regulated features on site. Bear with me. The property is zoned Highway Commercial C3 zone in the town's comprehensive zoning bylaw number 129-90. This zoning bylaw amendment proposes to change the zoning to a site-specific automotive service station C4 zone, as the primary use of the property will be an automotive service station. The C4 zone does not normally permit eating establishments, so a site-specific C4 zone is required to permit this additional use on 275 Gorham Road. The proposed site-specific C4 zoning will also include provisions to implement the agent's site plan. These provisions include a minimum front yard setback of 7.7 meters, planting strip widths adjacent to parking areas of 2.1 meters on the north side and 1.7 meters on the east side, and a planting strip width adjacent to the outer edges of a drive-through lane of 1.5 meters on the south side. This slide shows the associated site plan for the zoning bylaw amendment application. The site plan shows an automotive service station, an associated retail store, and an attached eating establishment. A drive-through lane for the eating establishment wraps around the rear of the site and exits on the southeast edge of the property at Gorham Road. The drive-through lane is capable of stacking 13 vehicles. Parking is provided along the north side of the property, in the side yard, and in the rear yard. So this is a picture of the existing motor vehicle repair shop looking west from Gorham Road. And this is an image of the same building looking southwest from the Friendship Trail where it meets Gorham Road. And that concludes my presentation.
Thank you, Mr. Vanderveen. Do any members of council have any questions? Seeing none? Oh, Councillor Nutt?
Thank you. Through you, Chair Butler, to Mr. Vanderveen. In the design that you were showing with the 13 cars and the proximity that there's a stoplight close by, what assurances do we have on keeping the flow of traffic moving in front of that establishment?
In my opinion, I don't think it'll be a huge impact. A lot of the parking area and the drive-through are at the rear of the site, so you don't have vehicles stacking on Gorham Road. They can enter the site and then go to the parking areas or the drive-through area respectively.
Thank you. Nothing further.
Thank you. Anybody else? Councillor Luberts?
Yes, thank you very much, Madam Chair. Can you, excuse me, can you go back to the slide with the 12 cars?
Sure.
Yeah, just looking at that there, obviously a drive-through, and just thinking off the top of my head, the only drive-throughs that I know right now in the town are like a McDonald's or a Burger King or a Tim Horton Donut. Is this eating establishment going to be similar to like a McDonald's or a Tim Horton Donut or some other coffee shop?
Counselor, yeah, we don't have confirmation at this time of exactly what the eating establishment is going to be, but it is my understanding it will be a traditional type of restaurant, like a takeout place or a drive-through restaurant, such as McDonald's or Tim Hortons or what have you. Perhaps the applicant's agent can speak to that. They're up next.
And, if you can just go back to the zoning, we have, when I'm looking at the legend over here, we got C3 is highway commercial, and then C4 is automotive service station. And it sounds to me like they want to put an automotive service station in here. But what is the difference between what it used to be in a highway and an automotive service station? Because it was a body shop before, and I would think that body shop and service station would fall under the same zoning. And can you explain why it's a different?
Yeah, through the chair to the counselor. The big difference is the highway commercial zone, which does also permit motor vehicle repair shops. It doesn't permit automotive service stations. So because the main use of the new development will be an automotive service station with the retail store and the eating establishment being accessory to it, staff thought it best to rezone it to automotive service station zone, which contains zoning provisions that relate to gasoline bars and an automotive service station specifically. So the base C3 zoning doesn't permit automotive service stations, so we're changing it to C4 to do so, with site-specific regulations to permit an eating establishment, which isn't permitted in the C4 zone normally.
Yes, thank you very much. If I may, Madam Chair, I guess what I'm trying to get at is, if I have a service that I'm providing and I'm repairing automotive vehicles, what's the difference between a body shop and a service garage? I guess that's more of what my question is. I'm a little confused as to why the zoning would be different.
Through the chair to the counselor, my reading of the zoning bylaw is an automotive service station provides sale of gasoline fuels in addition to the ability to repair and service vehicles, whereas a motor vehicle repair shop just services vehicles.
Oh, so they're planning on having a gas bar, repair shop, and a drive-through restaurant. Okay, thank you.
Just to add to your comment, actually has a motor vehicle repair shop component. It will just be,
Oh, just this,
yeah, sale of gasoline through a gasoline bar,
Okay, all right.
a retail store, and the
Okay,
eating
thank you.
establishment.
Any other questions? Counselor Passero?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Could you go back to the slide that shows the site plan as proposed? Perfect. The top bolded line shows proposed chain link fence installed on property line. And it looks like that goes from the east all the way to the west. But I do notice that we're looking at a trail connection between the Friendship Trail and the property, but that line traverses that. Is that just a typo, or am I reading that incorrectly? I'm assuming there would be a gap in that fence?
Through the chair to the counselor. Yeah, if there is a connection to the Friendship Trail, there would be a gap in the fence. I believe the fence might be existing, so it's shown on the site plan.
Okay.
But the,
It
Final-
says proposed, so I'm assuming.
oh, okay, sorry.
Yeah.
Yeah, I know we're still working with the agent in design of the site plan, so, where, you know, potential trail connection to the Friendship Trail will ultimately be found along with the bike servicing area. That's still something that we're working out, but,
I like the concept so far, so I'm looking forward to the final draft. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Counselor. Counselor Nutt, did you have another question?
Yes, Madam Chair, thank you. Through you to Mr. Vanderveen. On the site plan, when I was looking at the report, the northernmost entrance, there's a 7.72, what I'm assuming, meter gap between the edge of the pump, and there's something shown on there that's between the landscaping of the fencing and what I'm having most difficulty is how are the cars going to get to the back where the drive-through lane is? Because the pumps look like they extend almost the front of the lot, but then you got a propane filling station here to the north. And what is this like island here? Is that going to be removed, or like where is the flow through of traffic coming into the lot if it comes in through the northernmost entrance? How are they going to get to the back of the building to the drive-through lane?
through the chair to the counselor, based on the site plan, that structure you're seeing there, it's actually an underground storage tank that will be partially under sort of the first parking space along the northern edge of the site. But the intention is vehicles will be entering along the north edge of the site, basically driving over the area where the underground storage tank is, and then entering the rear portions of the property where much of the parking and the drive-through is.
So I'm assuming then, if I may, that when the refueling truck pulls in, that's going to cause a blockage of that entrance because he's going to have to fill those underground storage tanks. Is that correct?
Fair point, and some of our development staff have pointed that out through the site plan process. So from my knowledge, probably refueling will occur at a time of day where there's not going to be a lot of traffic anticipated on the site.
Okay. Thank you very much. Nope.
Any other questions? I have one question. Further to Councillor Nutt's question earlier with respect to bottlenecking. Is there going to be a bottleneck on both sides then with restricting traffic and traffic flow because of the two competing sides? They're directly across from each other. One's going to have 2 restaurants. This one's going to propose to have 1, I believe, you said, so.
I guess you are the chair. I don't know how much I could speak to that other than the fact that the site across the road is moving through the planning process as well with the site plan and their own zoning bylaw amendment application. We have looked at the site plan. It does look pretty well, though it's not finalized yet. I don't know if Associate Director Kira Dolch wants to add some comments to that.
Thank you. Yes, I wouldn't mind just elaborating a bit. The property across the street, as Daryl said, is currently just going through approvals, which will be subject to a public meeting on June 11th as well. They are looking at a similar setup. My understanding was just one additional drive-through restaurant. As part of the drive-through, I know you're concerned with queuing and things like that. As part of the drive-through, there was some sufficient study done back when the drive-through provisions were first done in our bylaw, and you require stacking for about 10 cars. I know the current Tim Hortons on Ridgeway Road doesn't have that, and that's why we're getting queuing on the roads. So this site plan has exceeded that, and also in lieu of that, obviously they do have some stacking ability on site beyond those 13 cars, which we looked at. We're looking the same on the other side of the street to make sure that we have sufficient stacking on site, because we really want to avoid any stacking on a major roadway like this.
Thank you.
If I could, Madam Chair, just to follow up on that point and to maybe flush that conversation out just a little bit further, maybe through you to Mr. Walsh, are we looking at any type of infrastructure improvements to Gorham Road at that situation? If you have a fast food restaurant to your right and you've got one across a lane of traffic to your left, and I like the one to the left instead of the one to the right, and for the one time in 100 I win the argument with the 8-year-old and we go to the one I like the best, is that not going to cause some queuing issues on the road itself? I understand Councillor Butler's concern maybe is taken care of as far as on-site capacity, but how are we going to deal with, two what I would envision are prominent retail names, and we only have 2 lanes of traffic to accommodate?
Mr. Walsh?
Through you, Madam Chair, your original question was, do we have anything proposed on Gorham Road? And the answer is no, we don't. I would imagine that if the situation became so dire that turning lanes were evident, we would bring forward a capital project at the appropriate time.
Through you, Madam Chair, then to Ms. Dolch, would we not look at this as the appropriate time to do that, as possible leverage from property owners to contribute to those types of capital costs, given that the reason we're looking at it is being necessitated by each of these developments?
Ms. Dolch?
Through you to the councillor. Yes, that's correct. It is an appropriate time to look at it. We've been looking at the site plan on a preliminary level at this point. Obviously, we're just at the beginning stages of it. We haven't seen any warrant for turning lanes or anything like that, but given the fact that we now have 2 applications in, we'll definitely take that into consideration and look at both.
I'd appreciate that, because I know that the queuing does get quite long, especially just waiting for lineups going into Joe's Value Mart. Further south to that, and then you have people who are looking to bypass traffic and utilizing the shoulder portion of the lane, so it does get dicey at some times, and I don't see this improving the situation. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Councillor. Any other questions? Councillor Luberts?
Yes, thank you very much, Madam Chair. And just to follow up on what Councillor Passero was saying about the queuing, looking at the site plan and seeing the cars as they're lined up, when they get to Gorham Road, has there been any thought that there would only be an exit to the right and no exit to the left, just to prevent bottlenecking?
Ms. Dolch?
Through you to the councillor, we can look at that as well through the site plan process. Right now, we don't see a need for, again, now that we have 2 applications, we'll have to look at it and how the functionality works in this section of the road. But as an independent site, is what we're dealing with right now before we look at it all together, we feel that turning movements will be fine both in and out at this point in time. Again, looking at both, now that we have both in together, we can start looking to make sure there's no conflicts in whether or not we do have just, like you said, a right out.
Yes, thank you very much. And Madam Chair, the reason that I asked that question is I'm just going down the road a little further, and we get into Crystal Beach, and we get into Tim Hortons, and the exiting from Tim Hortons is on a side street, and then they get to the corner where there's a stop sign. But here, what I'm seeing here is if you're going to be going left, you're going to be crisscrossing traffic. And I think, you know, if this year drive-through gets as busy as they do in the summer down in Crystal Beach, this is going to cause a lot of trouble, not just for the owner of this here establishment, but the one across the street and the one a little further north, the grocery store at Value Mart. So I think we might want to consider looking at a right exit only, and that will eliminate any bottlenecking and crisscrossing. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. One last time, any further questions from council? Okay, thank you, Mr. Vanderveen.
Thank you.
Now we'll hear from the owner, Alvin Learn of Kleimenhaga Garage, or by Gil Schuyler, who is the agent.
Screen.
Is the agent here, or
Yes.
would he like to speak? Can you please state your name for the record and the company that you're with?
Good evening, Madam Chair and members of the committee. My name is Michael Fry. I'm a land use planner. I'm with DG Biddle and Associates. We are a civil engineering and planning firm located in Oshawa, Ontario. Our client is Gil Schuyler, and he's the potential purchaser of this property, and of course he's the main proponent. Thank you. Very good, thanks. Thank you for the opportunity to speak tonight. I just wanted to make myself available to answer any questions and also to give you an idea as to what Mr. Schuyler has done in the past with regards to other redevelopments that he's done in the province. In particular, Mr. Schuyler, he purchases gas stations and redevelops them and typically would resell them to one of the larger retail firms. I'll just go through the site and the constraints on the site and follow up with a description of what Mr. Schuyler would, or an example of what Mr. Schuyler has done in the past. So as you see, we've got the site here with an existing building and an existing shed to the rear. He's proposing to demolish a portion of the south side of the existing building in order to install the drive-through, and then of course a new canopy for the gas bar. And in that redeveloped building, he's intending to install a gas bar, convenience store, restaurant, and accessory drive-through. The building, as you can see, is a one-story commercial building. It's older. It's getting toward the what would typically be considered the end of its lifespan. But what Mr. Schuyler does is he takes these types of buildings and these sites and redevelops them to upgrade the facade and install. Although it is a gas station, the result is quite a bit nicer than typically what's existing. This is an Ultramar in Caledon. And of course, there's a Petro-Canada in South Oshawa. Again, this is a redeveloped site. This was an existing building that's been redeveloped. This is another site in Peterborough. As you can see, there's the subway and there's other uses on the site. And also here, just to the west of us in Hamilton, existing building divided up. The building divided up for other uses. Again, the convenience store, and in this case, a automobile repair facility. Given that, that is the main constraint that we have in the site, is that my client prefers to redevelop the buildings because, of course, there is value in that building itself, and of course, reducing waste is one thing, but the value in the building is primary concern to Mr. Choliar. And that's what creates the constraints on the site, particularly the setbacks that we're requesting through this zoning bylaw amendment. The setback to the canopy, the setback for the landscaped areas to the north and the south, and of course, there was one other variance that we were seeking, but it's all related to the site itself. The Councillor Passero identified earlier that there was the connection to the Friendship Trail, and this was something that we were happy to introduce to the town in order to demonstrate that Mr. Choliar is a community-minded. He wanted to install this bicycle repair facility. And it does say, it does show the fence through the path connection, but in fact, that is the existing fence. We were proposing 2 fences. Unfortunately, they are underneath what's currently shown as the property line. I was hoping that if any members of the committee had any questions with regards to the site itself, or with regard to any of the past projects that Mr. Choliar had, I'd be happy to answer those. Thank you.
Thank you. Once again, can you state your name?
It's Michael Fry, F-R-Y.
Michael Fry. Does any member of council have any questions for Mr. Fry? Councillor Luberts?
Yes, thank you very much, Madam Chair. Just looking at the drive-through portion, and is there going to be a sit-down area for the eating establishment, or is it strictly drive-through?
Through you, Madam Chair, yes, we are intending to have a sit-down area within the restaurant itself. The restaurant portion of the building itself is not large enough to accommodate, say, a McDonald's or one of the larger franchises. So we can only assume that it will be something smaller, such as a small Tim Hortons or a Subway sandwich or something to that effect.
Oh, okay, thank you very much. I just wanted to comment. I like what I see here, and I know that over the years there has been some talk about Ridgeway needs something like that, and maybe the bottlenecking that we get down at Crystal Beach with the Tim Hortons might be relieved a little bit if we have the cars and have people have another options of driving through. So I like what I see here, and hopefully things will move forward for you, and I wish you the best of luck.
Very good.
With
Thank
your endeavor. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Luberts. Councillor McDermott? Councillor Passero?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Mr. Fry, in some of the slides you showed of previous developments, one of the gas stations showed gas at 93.3 and one had 138.9. We'd like the one at 93.3.
Thank you, Councillor. I'll do my best.
Thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Passero. Any other questions? Yes, Councillor Luberts.
Yes, thank you very much. I just noticed here in the middle, we have, I'm only seeing one handicap zone, and I'm wondering, have you circulated this to our accessibility committee? And if not, can we make sure that they receive the site plan and provide some comments?
Ms. Dolch?
Through you to the councillor, yes, we can have the accessibility committee review it. However, we do have accessible parking provisions within our zoning bylaw, and they are required the appropriate amount of spaces through those provisions.
Okay, thank you. The only reason I brought it up, because I only see one place here, and it looks like, I can't read it that well, but it looks like maybe I can expand it. 6 meters? I don't know how many. I don't know what that measurement would be. It looks like 6 meters for handicap. Is that right?
Yes, through you, Madam Chair, the handicap space is measured at 6 meters in length and 3.4 meters in width with an access aisle clear of any obstructions of 1.88 meters.
So how many parking spaces would that accommodate?
That would accommodate one parking space, though I understand that we have a surplus of parking if the accessibility committee comes back and requests an additional. We would.
Yeah, I'm sure they'd appreciate to be allowed to comment. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Luberts. Any other questions? Thank you.
Very good. Thank you.
This will give us an opportunity to hear members of the public who are for the project. Would anybody like to speak in favor of the project? Okay, seeing none, then I will move on. And those who are against the project, sir, would you like to come up and state your name for the record and your address, please?
Mike Miner. Oh, sorry. Mike Miner, M-I-N-O-R.
And your address, please?
3859 Disher Street. Good evening, council members. My name is Mike, and I've raised my family across the street of this proposed project for 25 years now. And I've lived in Ridgeway for a total of 42. I've seen many businesses come and go in that time because this is a very small and quiet area. Being a small and quiet, quiet area are just a couple of reasons I would like to see the not to see this project go forward. I just want to touch on a couple of things. First was traffic flow and infrastructure, and you guys both hit them right on. This is a traffic nightmare. There has been some kind of, was there some kind of traffic study done with this? May I ask? Or am I out of line?
So we can take those questions and we can direct them to staff.
Oh, okay, sorry. Or an audit performed, because it's extremely busy around there in the summertime. From mid-June to Labor Day, it's hard to even get around in this area. Gorham Road is the only direct road that takes you to Crystal Beach and the lake itself. From a safety point of view, first responders, fire, ambulance, and police will see an increase of response time due to the increase of traffic. For them, every second counts. Infrastructure. Are the sewer and water lines underground? Are they going to be able to withstand the added volume pressures because of the increase of public use? In my years of living on Disher Street, I don't believe Gorham Road or Disher Street has ever been updated. And I'm almost positive about that. You could look into that if you may. I don't even know if the soil's been tested. It may very well be, I don't know. The noise level from these people in cars up late at night, the air pollution from these cars' exhaust, as well as the venting from the fryers in a restaurant, can travel across my house because I live right across the street. And the prevailing winds, they come straight from the west. The population alone in this area drops off considerably after Labor Day. So it may be hard to even be profitable because of such slow times. Just another point I'd like to add, the depreciation of our homes by at least 10 to 12%, the increase of wildlife because of garbage, and I'm sure there'll be a coyote or two to meet a person putting out the garbage late at night because there's a lot of them running in those back fields. I don't know if an alternative is good, if somewhere on Highway 3 would be good for this, and it would even create more exposure for a restaurant or a gas station because there's more people that travel the highway. Please let this nice and quiet Ridgeway be just that, nice and quiet. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Mr. Miner. If you want us to just stay at the podium in case any members of council have
sure.
questions for you. Do any members of council have questions for Mr. Miner? Councillor Passero?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Mr. Miner, just so I can put it in my notes, the one slide that they showed us, it didn't show too much of Disher Street. So
yes.
Just for some context, where is your property as far as how far going over to the east?
When I
Yep.
look straight at Climax Garage
Straight, okay,
every morning.
perfect. Just gives me some context. while we're
Yep,
having
I live
discussions.
right across the street.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Counselor. Any other counselors? Thank you, Mr. Minor.
Thank you.
Any other member of the public that would like to speak against this project?
Good evening.
Address for the
Richard
record,
Paderak, 3711 Hazel. I didn't come here with the intention of speaking, but, and I'm not speaking for or against, I just have some questions. Reiterating what the gentleman before said, is there any capacity under your Planning Act, your official plan for a traffic study? And number two, under the Planning Act, is there any capacity for a mini secondary plan to consider the impact of both of the projects that are going to occur, one across from the other? Because all drive-through restaurants are not created equal. If sometimes they can be fabulously successful, and once they're in, the die is cast, and the problem is the municipalities. The further question I would have for staff is there a capacity to ask for not a bond, but a deposit to be held for a period of months until it is seen that there is no requirement for a widening in that location? Because I agree with the previous gentleman, the traffic is extraordinarily heavy right now at certain times of day. In the summer, it extends much greater. I came out this evening on my way here. For some reason, I ended up using Gorham to get to Garrison, and I was glad I was turning right because there was nonstop traffic coming from the north going south. So I would just issue a little bit of caution there. And I would say, for the point of transparency, I was involved in the redevelopment of the Caledon property, and I met Mr. Scolar. He did a good job there, but it's a 5-lane road at that point, and all of the traffic going in and out comes from the same side of the road. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Paderak. Can we get your address again, please?
3711 Hazel.
Thank you. And do any members of council have any questions for Mr. Paderak? None? Thank you, Mr. Paderak. Any other members? Can you please state your name and your address for the record, please?
Thank you. Leah Fior, 24 Lincoln Road East, Crystal Beach. And following suit, not for or against, but do have some concerns over the traffic flow, especially once it hits the point of Friendship Trail. Especially, we see a lot of crossover in the summer. Is there the capacity to put, if there was the capacity to put a stop sign there so that we'd allow for crossing, that would really create a lot of congestion in that small part. We're going downhill, so there's a different flow, I would say. And I would encourage that within that traffic study, if we can look as far as to the Friendship Trail to ensure that there's safe crossing of cyclists and, people on bikes and people who walk, so that there's no unforeseen accidents.
Thank you, Ms. Fior. That's a very good point. Any members of council have any questions? Councillor Passero?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just a response to Ms. Fior and from my colleagues. The 4-Year Active Transportation Committee has identified that intersection where it meets the Friendship Trail as an identified location for proposed works. So it was discussed at a committee meeting just previous. So they recognize the danger, recognize how busy that road is. So we're hoping to have some options for council consideration in the near future as we move forward with our active transportation study next year.
Perfect.
So
thank you
for raising that point.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any other members of the public? Seeing none, then I will close this public meeting. You may have the chair back.
Thank you very much, Councillor Butler. It takes us to the second public meeting, and this is with respect to the community improvement plan for the South End or Riverwalk. Good evening, Mr. Miller. So we're going to have comments from you, some background information, and then we can hear from the public.
Yep, correct. Good evening, Mayor, Redicott, Council. I'm just going to get used to your new little setup here. Here we go. We close this one up. Okay. Mine goes right into it. Okay, so yes, tonight is the public meeting for the South End Riverwalk Community Improvement Plan. As you will recall, we've just recently were approved the secondary plan in March. And as part of the recommendations that fell out of that and was the creation of a South End Riverwalk Community Improvement Plan. So just, I'm going to start with a bit of general information. So the Town Council are the approval authority for community improvement plans. Not like OPA 37, which was the secondary plan itself. It had to receive approval at the regional level. When we're dealing with a community improvement plan, section 28 comes into play, and that's the section that we're seeking approval under, and the town has that authority to do so. The approval of a community improvement plan, I'm going to get that mixed up all night, I know. The approval of the community improvement plan is to follow the same process as doing an official plan amendment. So the same notifications, circulations, and all those types of requirements that are found when you're doing an official plan amendment are the same for the CIP. So that's easy to follow along with. So, missing on the next slide here. The circulation comments received were outlined in the report. They're in appendix, I think appendix 4 of PDS 31 that you have. Just in quick response to that, there were no concerns raised. Ministry of Municipal Affairs did have quite a few comments, but their comments were aimed at having us modify our programs to include affordable housing components to be funded. Staff's not adverse to looking at that, but my response to MMA at this point would be to just allow us to get the plan implemented. There are some regional implications and some reviews coming up, and that's what I'm going to talk to and point to shortly, as in a slide or two from now. So, and another thing I'd like just to mention with this slide is that in the report itself, I made a comment regarding any comments received between the administrative deadline of filing this report and tonight. I would raise it here, and I had received 2 additional comments, one from our chief building official and one from infrastructure services via our coordinator, our development coordinator. Both have no concerns, so I'm just passing that along here tonight as well. Generally, all the comments received, there were no negative comments. So let's go to the next one here. So this public meeting is being held in accordance with the Planning Act, and it's to hear from the council and public on any concerns they may have with us proceeding with this. This is what I'm going to call another chapter in our suite of downtown or core area CIPs. We currently have our Bridgeburg, Ridgeway, and Stevensville plans up and running, and this would be an addition to that as we head down the path of one day getting a Crystal Beach one in place as well. They're structured as one-time grants. They have maximums, but it's a easy process to understand. You're not getting into a prorating system of tax incremental stuff, which is another way of doing grants, and we can look at that going forward. I'm going to just talk about the review shortly, so we'll get to that. Let's see here. We've benefited certainly from having the region on board with us, and they are themselves undertaking the review currently. So that incentive review is a value for money audit that I think that this was all came out of last year when they, August, I think they had expended or had accounted for their budget, and they put a pause on promising monies to local municipalities, and that also started the process of their program reviews. But that audit is underway. There was a report delivered to the regional audit committee, I believe, May 7th, and it was also included in the planning economic development agenda of the regions on May 16th. So that phase one was an internal look. Regionally, they were looking at the way they dealt with the process, with dealing with us, so the intake of applications, efficiencies, effectiveness. And the second phase, which is underway, and I believe is a report due from the region on this in June sometime, will be offering the recommendations as to what they should do with their programs and changes and things of that nature. So the reason I'm mentioning the region so much right now is that we want 50-cent dollars. And so right now, the way things are structured, that's what we're achieving here. And we'd be very much interested in seeing what comes back from the region. And should we, as a municipality, want to benefit with our budget dollars by having match dollars, this council will be informed by myself or members, senior staff, and if they should so choose, initiate an update to all of our CIPs, and that's going to tie back to what I was talking about with the Ministry of Municipal Affairs. They're commenting on this single CIP document, so just the south end, and they would want us to put affordable housing components in. Well, and our CIP programs are I'll call model programs. We can apply these and have applied these, as we go. Facade improvements, residential intensification, all those types of programs are essentially the same model, and we can apply it. So if we're going to do an affordable component, we'll do it to them all. And I would like to wait, or my suggestion would be to wait until we get the feedback from the region, they make their changes, and if we want to make changes to match dollars, that's what we do, and that's the time when we look at all the review. Okay, so I'm just sort of getting that philosophy, or what I believe is the correct course of action as we move forward. I think I've talked about all that stuff just without hitting the slides, so I'll just keep going. Section 6 of our official plan is where we find the community improvement section, and it outlines the things that we have to do as well, which is echoed down from Section 28 of the Planning Act. But the secondary plan that we just completed and had approved also had a couple of recommendations or comments inside of it, and I just quoted a couple of them there. Rejuvenation of the waterfront and core area commercial is also a prime candidate for a community improvement plan incentive program. So, there was a push to put something like this in place from the secondary plan, and boundaries of the community improvement project area will be established under a separate amendment, being what we're dealing here with now. There's basically a CIP. Implementing a CIP is a two-step process. One is to define the geography. So that's one thing that's referred to as the community improvement project area. And the second half of it is applying the programs to it. We're not reinventing the wheel with the programs. We have the programs, but it's the second half of it. Each require a bylaw, one to create the boundary and one to implement the programs that we have. And you can see there the programs are the commercial facade improvement, commercial signage, and the residential creation and intensification. The goals and objectives, of course, are to encourage and strengthen the Main Street character that we have down there along that waterfront setting. Introduce the new residential, or introduce or promote the residential to help stimulate or to keep the viability of commercial alive. And like I said, they're one-time grants. They're sizable, I would consider, as one-time grants. And also we measure them, and I report to this council October, November annually. So you can take in information on these programs, the performance for the previous year as you go heading to your budget considerations for the next year. Here we have the map on the left would be the land use plan from the secondary plan that was approved in March. That's and you can see the light blue rectangle is honing in, and the blue up in the center is the core mixed use, or the core area that we're dealing with. And the image on the right is essentially the boundary that's being proposed as the CIP area for the South End Riverwalk CIP. So just to give you context on the scale and size of that, I believe there was 32 properties in that group. The programs themselves, the facade improvements I don't think it's laid out all right there, the monies and things. There's a formula we put in place. It's a lot of talking, and I don't think we need to go through that right now, but I would encourage council, if they have any questions, to certainly contact me. Public are always welcome to contact me. It's a shared dollar for dollar, and with the applicant also contributing. The commercial signage program was a program that we generally put in place to help tenants more so than the owners. We were finding in some of the communities there was a lot of rented out commercial use, and the people weren't going to invest in the building, but they would be more than willing to invest in a sign. So that was a program that was geared towards the commercial tenants. And of course, the residential component of the residential creation is one that will help fund creation of new residential units. And certainly that's been very well used in the last little while, and I'm happy to see that. I forget the total number in the last couple of years, but I think there's been contributions towards about 18 or so units in our downtown CIP areas, which is great. And the CIP document as proposed requires me to report, as I mentioned. And staff in the finance department can tap me anytime to find out what the status of my application activity is throughout the year. And of course, I can go to them to find out what we have as a running balance. And that's, I think, all I'd like to say about the CIPs this evening, and I welcome any questions from council and public.
Thank you very much, Mr. Miller. Do any members of council have any questions? Councillor Luberts?
Yes, thank you very much, Mayor Redekop. Mr. Miller, slide 13.
Okay.
I just wanted to make sure that I'm clear. This year intensification program and creation would be a one-time grant, as opposed to the other ones where they can apply numerous times.
No, they're all one-time grants, essentially. There's a maximum, sorry, through you, Mayor, to Councillor Luberts. There's a maximum amount assigned per property, and you can use up to that amount. So it's like for the facade improvement, for example, you may one year spend a certain amount of money doing windows and painting, but the next year you want to do a whole new cornice work or something like that. You can continue to go back up to a maximum. Each property, and that's the way the formula is worked out, is through measurement. The built linear foot is worth a certain amount of money, and you can't exceed that. That's the way our programs are set up. The region have a cap on that as well, and we'll refine all that through the review. I think we have a great program, and we shared it with them through their audit, and we hope that they will adopt it. But there is a set maximum that way. The residential portion is based on square footage. You're creating new residential units, essentially $10 a square foot, up to $10,000 per unit, up to a maximum of 4 units. So that was put together that way so that we didn't have a small building owner trying to put in, 6 shoe boxes. We wanted good living space, 700, 800 square feet type thing, 1-2 bedroom. So tying the costs to the size of the square footage, helps. So yeah, that's
I understand that. Thank you very much. And so what I wanted to key on was the facade program.
Yes.
For the commercial establishments. So there's a maximum that you can receive for a facade within the facade program, but you can do so much this year, and then again next year apply for more, and then keep applying until you reach your maximum.
Correct. You can do that through you, Mayor Redekop, to Councillor Luberts. Yes, you could take that approach. But most people are not. Most people are taking advantage, full advantage while the monies are available. All of these programs are, on available budget. So if there's no money, there's no money, and the annual budget's renewed. So I think most people are taking an approach that we'll do it all at one time, get as much done as we can. That's what I found, my experience through the people who've come in. I've had some people come in for a second time who haven't maxed out, but I think for the most part, they're spending the monies to do comprehensive work.
I think my question would be, have you given any consideration? I'm looking at this year, now we have Bridgeburg as a secondary plan and CIP, South End secondary plan, CIP, Ridgeway secondary plan. We're expanding, and now we're going to get into Stevensville, we're going to get into Crystal Beach, but the money is the same. So now we've expanded the amount of people that can apply, and it's based on first come, first serve. Have you discussed anything with staff as to asking council to increase the budget to allow for the facade program? And secondly, have you considered even maybe only allowing this year for these here CIP areas, and then like alternate every other year for different ones? So, because once we get all the CIPs together, we could run out of funding in a week.
Okay.
Mr. Miller.
Through you, Mayor Redekop, to Councillor Luberts, I can appreciate your concern over exhausting the budgets with all of the CIPs running online. That hasn't been the case so far. Council has been very generous in the past, and we've gone for our annual operationals. Dollars have been increasing, along with the sequencing of, we started with Ridgeway and Bridgeburg together, then we added Stevensville, and so council has been upping the budget, I guess you could say, for that. And we're now proposing to add the south end. It's not as many properties as some of the other ones, have far more commercial properties that are involved in than this proposed one here. But that's the purpose of the annual report, is to say, what we have, what we've used, what we're anticipating. So if council going into their budget deliberations want to take that under advisement, it's up to council. I'm sure staff would put forward a recommendation. It's council's consideration annually if they want to make adjustments for the coming year in this.
Okay, thank you very much. I just wanted everybody to understand that we're not using the same amount each time we have a CIP, where the recommendation is to increase the amount of money available.
Just through you, Mayor Redekop, to clarify, we do consider it a pool of money, and all the CIPs tap into that pool of money. It's just making sure we're monitoring what's in there, and monitoring the activity as well, and making sure that we're ready for it.
Okay, thank you very much.
Anything further, Councillor Luberts? Anyone else? Mr. Miller, with respect to the area that's been adopted, I know that there's a portion in the report that deals with the rationale. I note that at the south end of the area, which is the north limit of Princess Street, there are some houses that front on Princess as opposed to Niagara Boulevard. There are houses further south on Queen Street that actually are commercially used as well. Is there any consideration given to expanding the CIP area?
Council could make that as a recommendation. I do understand where you are with that question, Mayor Redekop. The area along Queen Street, there was a portion of that was also, used to be commercial, that was changed to a medium residential. Some of the commercial that was there was left on request, or there were operating commercially still. I think the long-term vision would probably see those lands heading towards a residential, a higher density residential, like a medium density, which is some of those properties were designated for. And since these are commercially geared programs, that was my rationale for not introducing them here. But this council will, at the time, make any recommendations to expand that should they want to.
Yep, we understand it. These boundaries that you're recommending, they're based on consultation, and they're based on comments that you received, I presume, during the secondary planning process and relative to this?
Relative to this, we've talked about, it's not as though I was exercising the discussion on community improvement through the secondary plan process. It was always something that was there, and has, protocol-wise, has been falling on the heels of firm up the land use first before we introduce the programs. There's no sense putting a boundary on stuff that's not going to be accessible to these programs. So what you see there in the slide is essentially the boundary mimics, or is highly reflective of what is the core mixed-use area. We had reduced the commercial designation and zoning through the secondary plan to the north of that. And as mentioned, some of the areas over in the Queen Street area, because there was far too much vacant, underutilized, and not used commercial lands. So by restricting that, we converted those lands to medium density. But I go back to saying these are commercially driven programs. If this council wants to explore, and it's all direction will come from them about putting in place incentive programs for stimulating growth on medium density, or incentives for residential on medium density, that's something that this council can look at.
Right, and if anyone has concerns about the area for the CIP, you're going to be doing, if the report that's further on our agenda is passed, you'll be doing a further report to council.
Correct, Mayor Redekop. This is the information report. There will be a recommendation report, so if anybody else wants to add in or contact me or write in as to why, then we will consider those, and we would make a recommendation whether or not we felt it was appropriate to include it or not to this council, and council makes the decision at that time. But this is what's proposed currently.
Thanks very much, Mr. Miller. Before you sit down, any other members have any questions? If not, thank you very much. Okay. So at this point, I'll ask if there's anyone who wishes to address council with respect to the comments made by Mr. Miller or the South End Riverwalk Community Improvement Plan core area. You may come forward now, one at a time. Good evening.
Good evening.
Go ahead, your name and address for the record, sir.
My name is Roger Gregoire, and I'm at 203 Niagara Boulevard. So I fall into the category of the proposed area. And I am for the movement that Mr. Miller seems to be following. I know those grants that are being proposed, we would like to see, I don't know if there's a limit to what you can actually apply for, because we have just purchased this property and it's in need of some repair. So we're cleaning it up, and we see such a beautiful spot in front of us there with the river, and we would like to add to the community and create this as a destination, for people to come. And we rant and rave, we tell all our friends, and we're bringing people down from the east, I guess, or west, the Hamilton, Ancaster, Burlington area. They're all coming down, they're all falling in love with it. So I would like I'd like to be involved more, and we're going to do our best to follow the guidelines and jump in wholeheartedly to be part of the community.
Okay, so we're not at the point where you can apply for anything yet, but if you want advance information, you could always contact Mr. Miller, who can provide you with the particulars of the three programs that we do offer within this improvement area.
And as for Queen Street, like, we do have some property on Queen Street as well. So when you mentioned Queen Street, I thought, oh, okay, that's interesting.
Then you need to speak to Mr. Miller.
Very good.
Do you have anything further you wish to add?
Nope.
Any members of council have any questions of Mr. Gregoire? Thank you very much, sir.
Okay, thank you.
For anyone else who wishes to address council with respect to this matter? Mr. Maskell? Good evening.
Good evening.
Name and address, please.
Brian, don't do that, you're making me laugh. Brian Maskell, 177 Niagara Boulevard, Fort Erie. And my property is between Birdie Street and Murray in the area that this is being proposed. The question I have relates to the archaeological issue. And I'm just wondering what the status of the region coming forward relative to the Brownfield grant money that has been referenced before, if that's available, if you know when that might be available?
Sure. Mr. Miller, if you've got an answer, why don't you provide that right now?
Okay. Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Mr. Maskell. The program is something at the regional level. I can't say where it stands or whether it's been proposed. I do recall Councilor Nunziata's press to have that as part of their funding review. So I would have to look into that for you and see where they're standing with that request, because that was basically, I think, essentially a DC type of relief.
With development charge rebates.
I think it does. And so this is a little bit different, but the program that I had spoken to Mr. Maskell about in the past was something that was generated from Councilor Nunziata's press to have that type of a program implemented, and the comment at the time from the council was that they would undertake review during their incentive review that's on now. So I would want to seek out more information on just where they stand today with something like that.
That's fine. You can provide that. That was added to the development charges bylaw, and additional information from you would be helpful to Mr. Maskell and anyone else who's in this area, because these are all archaeologically sensitive lands.
Yeah. So that's the information I have now. Hopefully it's enough for now, but I would like some time to
Mr. Maskell, anything further?
Thank you. Yeah, my only suggestion along with that is they're connected. So the one, in my case, for sure, if I did anything with this property, which I would consider doing, again, for sure, is going to relate to the footprint of it relative to the archaeological issue. So that was my concern. So thank you very much.
Mr. Maskell, you stay on top of Mr. Miller, and he'll be able to help you coordinate those concerns.
Thank you, everybody.
Anybody have any questions of Mr. Maskell? Nope. Is there anyone else who wishes to address council this evening with respect to this particular public meeting? If not, then I'm going to declare this public meeting closed, and we're going to continue on with our agenda, and that takes us to Planning and Development Services. And the chair to you, Councilor Passero.
Thank you, Your Worship. Planning and Development Services is in session. No presentations or delegations tonight. Report first up, PDS 30-2018, the proposed zoning bylaw amendment concerning 275 Gorham Road. This is the information report from the public meeting that we heard earlier. Councillor McDermott, would you move that report? Thank you. Comments or questions to the information report? First, we had some comments come through. Ms. Dolch, Mr. Walsh, for Mr. Minor, and Ms. Fiore, and I believe Mr. Paderak referenced it as well. At what point would a traffic study come into play, or would it come into play during this proposed process, or would that have to be specifically directed through council? Ms. Dolch?
Thank you. A traffic study originally wasn't requested by development staff and infrastructure staff. Now that we have two applications, we're going to look at the two in conjunction together and determine whether or not a traffic study is warranted. Should council wish to do so, they can direct us to require one in any event.
And Madam Chair, would we do that as making an amendment to this report, or would we simply leave that for staff comment? I know they've heard that, and that would come back as part of the recommendation report. Ms. Dolch, would that just come back as part of the recommendation report?
Yes, it would come back as part of the recommendation report in terms of if you requested the traffic study. We would ask the proponent to prepare that traffic study before it came back to council for recommendation.
Okay. And Ms. Dolch or Mr. Walsh, would that also speak to the other comment we heard, which is who would fund proposed works if proposed works were desired by council?
Yes, that would, obviously, any improvements recommended by that traffic study, obviously would be funded by the proponent, but not by the town.
Okay. Further comments or questions? Seeing none, so just for the benefit of those who spoke earlier during the public meeting, the only thing council will be doing now is passing the recommendation report. Comments from council now and earlier, as well as your comments, will be encapsulated, and a further recommendation report will follow. So us putting our hands up, yes or no tonight, has no bearing on the application itself. We're just receiving for information purposes. So seeing nothing further, all in favor? Any opposed? And noting Mayor Redekop's conflict of interest on that matter. So that is carried. Next up is PDS 31-2018 regarding the Downtown South End Riverwalk Core Area Community Improvement Plan. The information report, also on the heels of the public meeting just concluded. A mover for that is Worship. Comments or questions? Seeing none, just a thank you to Mr. Miller for his work on this file. Stellar job from start to finish, as evidenced by the comments we received. All those in favor? That's carried. New business or inquiries under Community and Development Services. Planning and Development Services. I'm not used to that yet. Mayor Redekop.
Thank you, Councillor Passero. A few weeks ago, you had an inquiry about the tree cutting that was taking place around the stormwater management plan for the new development that's taking place just north of Albany. And I know that the staff was waiting for something from, I believe, the engineer for the developer. Just wondering whether there's been anything received yet, because I know the residents in that area are quite anxious to get some information about this.
Before I turn that over to Ms. Dolch, I will say I have had a conversation with Mr. Brady and Ms. Dolch earlier. I'll let her answer whether or not we've gotten the final detailed design as far as landscaping goes, but I do plan on bringing a notice of motion forward to hopefully affect some changes as far as what is currently proposed. But Ms. Dolch, do we have, are we in receipt of those detailed designs regarding landscaping?
Through you to His Worship. No, we're not in receipt of the detailed design yet. We're still at the very preliminary level. We have some drawings just showing the ponding, but not the details.
Your Worship?
Well, I'm wondering whether there still couldn't be some information that could be sent out to the residents so that they got some idea of what's actually taking place there. They've seen a lot of trees cut down. They understand that there's a stormwater management pond. They're trying, I think the ones that I've spoken to and perhaps the ones you've spoken to are trying to get an understanding of exactly what the plan is. So I'm just wondering whether we couldn't get some information out sooner rather than later.
I've met with the representatives from the townhomes on the west, and I've met with some of the residents along Nancy Street and some of the key representatives to get the message out. I think my notice of motion, if approved, will significantly alter the current plan. So I think if we were to provide something now and council were supportive of my proposed changes, we'd end up having to backtrack, and I think it may just cause more confusion. So with your indulgence, Your Worship, let's see if council's supportive of what I'd like to do a week from now.
Absolutely.
Anything further, Your Worship?
No, thank you.
Thank you, Your Worship. Further comments or questions under new business or inquiries? Seeing none, comments or questions regarding the business status report? Seeing none, I will turn the chair back to His Worship.
Thank you very much, Councillor Passero. That takes us to Infrastructure Services. Councillor Butler. Your Infrastructure Services.
Thank you, Your Worship. I forgot that Councillor Zanko is not here today, so there are no presentations and delegations for Infrastructure Services, which is now open, by the way. And we will be starting with report number IS-13-1-2018 to provide council with information from the meeting with Beachcombers to discuss their request for a subsidized rental rate from the rate recommended in report number IS-13-2018. Can I have a mover? Councillor McDermott. That report is now on the floor. Any questions or comments from members of council? Your Worship.
Yeah, I'm going to support this, but I'm going to be moving an amendment to the recommendations in the second report that's coming up. That was the original report. This report is simply for information purposes, but I do want to propose that we do enter into some type of pilot project when we get to the next report.
Thank you, Your Worship. Councillor Passero, you had your hand up? No? Okay. Any other councillors? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor? That is unanimous. That moves us to report number IS-13-2018, addition of an hourly floor rental rate at Stevensville Memorial Hall to the consolidated schedule of fees and charges, which was postponed from the May 7th, 2018 council and committee meeting. Can I have a mover, please? Your Worship, thank you. That is now on the floor. Any comments or questions? Your Worship.
Yes, so I'm going to support this because I think it's helpful for us to at least have some type of rate in the event there's use of that facility. But you recall that we did have a delegation from the Beachcombers. Mr. Paderak was here. He was accompanied by someone else. And this was before us, again, this particular report, and we asked for it to be deferred so we could get the report that we just dealt with to provide some comment from staff. The previous report did address the discussions that staff had with representatives from the Beachcombers and did present an option which had to do with potential grant to the Beachcombers with respect to the use of the Stevensville Memorial Hall for pickleball. My understanding is that the use that's being proposed is primarily in the winter, that it's primarily during the daytime, and that it provides us with an opportunity to enter into an agreement with an organization that has a long history in Fort Erie. I think they're quite reliable individuals. At least they have proven to be so in the past. We are working with them in terms of information and activity on a community hub, so that they're a potential partner for us on a broader scale. So I'm thinking that it would be appropriate for us to contemplate some type of pilot project to accommodate the beachcombers, to see as well if they can expand the pickleball activities in the winter months. Right now, they're playing outside, as I understand it, and we've got some facilities, and we've even actually committed in the long term to be creating some pickleball courts on our existing tennis courts over a period of time. So I'd like to move all of this to say that I'd like to move an amendment to the report to add a second paragraph, and that is, and I have provided each of you with, except for the clerk, with, here I can, okay. Thank you. So I would like to move that we add a second provision to this, to the recommendation. As soon as I find it. And that is that staff be directed to work with the beachcombers to establish an agreement for a pilot project with the following potential aspects. That it be a 6-month period commencing October the 1st, that the town would charge the $14 per hour rental, but provide a grant of up to $1,500, subject to possible increase if the pilot exceeds expectations, to cover such rental charges. The beachcombers to charge $1 per player per session, or whatever the group feels appropriate, with funds to be paid to the town at the end of every other month. That use be during the daytime when the hall is available, initially 1 day per week, but subject to increase as activity may warrant and the hall is available. Beachcombers be provided with the key to open and close the hall, set up and take down court markings, and leave the hall in a state of cleanliness. And that the town and beachcombers are to meet at the end of the 2nd and 4th months of the pilot to review how the pilot project is progressing, discuss any concerns, update the financial situation, and cooperate on any opportunities to increase the number of participants. If I could speak to that, Madam Chair.
Sure.
This certainly isn't the format necessarily for the agreement. There may be other provisions that staff would recommend. There may be some changes that the beachcombers would suggest, but I have run this past Mr. Paderak. I have discussed this concept with Tom Cookett, and he would prefer that this be the approach that we take. So I'm hoping that council will support this, and there's some leeway for staff and the beachcombers to work this out before it would commence in October.
So that amendment is on the floor, and I believe I need a second person to...
Not in committee.
So now that that amendment is on the floor, would any members of council like to speak to that? Councillor Nutt?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Through you to the mayor. The only thing missing in your recommendation here that I would maybe propose as a friendly amendment is that they ensure that they obtain their own insurance coverage, because it's not a volunteer event or anything like that, so I don't believe they would. But maybe Mr. Lustig could provide a proper wording.
I think we can add, I mean, I'm quite happy to add a 7th item that that the beachcombers provide their own insurance as required by the town, so that can be an area for discussion.
That's satisfactory to me.
Great. Any other comments? Councillor Passir?
Yes, thank you very much, Madam Chair. On the 4th recommendation here, that the use to be during the daytime when the hall is available, and just thinking as how seniors operate, and especially seniors that are retired, they set their schedule, their weekly schedule, or their leisure schedule on a regular basis. And I'm just wondering if they set up, let's say pickleball will be every Wednesday at 2 o'clock in the afternoon. What I'm reading here is if someone were to ask for that hall at at 2 o'clock on Wednesday, then it won't be available to the beachcombers. So if they were to give a schedule to the town on what days they would like to use them, as long as it's available when they set their schedule, then it's theirs. But I'd hate to see them have to break up, and 1 week it's on a Wednesday, the next week it's on a Tuesday, and then maybe if we can't get the haul till Friday. You understand what I'm saying?
I do understand. If I might, Madam Chair.
I was just going to ask you if you'd
Yeah,
like to
yeah, the
speak to that.
proposition is that the hall is sitting there, it's vacant, and there's no rent being generated. My understanding is that if there is someone that wishes to rent the hall during a particular day, that the beachcombers would accommodate that. So that the intent is for them to utilize a hall that would otherwise be vacant. But if there are rental opportunities for the municipality, it's not intended to be interfered with. However, that's something that can be worked out when staff and the beachcombers work on the pilot project. Because it, yep.
Any other members of council? Councillor Passero.
It happens once per term, but I agree with Councillor Luberts. And even though his hand went up, it was, the same thing I was thinking is I understand our rationale for wanting to bump because of the excess revenue, but I think if we're going to commit to this, we're already committing to this via the dollar amount and via the responsibility. And I'd hate to see a pilot project come and go for 6 months and then have some questions as to, well, there was 3 weeks in a row we couldn't get in on the Tuesday. And so, you know what, if they come up with their schedule and it's done 2 or 3 months in advance, I have no issue saying that they have first right of refusal for those times. But to his worship's point, that's something staff can work out with beachcombers. But in my mind, we're going with this. Let's see what happens. The likelihood of something being there on the afternoon, I think, is few and far between based on past practice. But let's say the 1 in a million shot comes in, I'd hate it to upset this pilot project and screw up the consistency when we're looking to gauge some numbers 6 months from now. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Councillor. Any other councillors? Seeing none, I'll call the question on the amendment. All those in favor? That's unanimously passed. And now we will bring the report as amended to the table. Anybody from the member of council would like to speak to that? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor? That is passed unanimously as well. That moves us to report number IS-17-2018, award of tender for North Mill Street, water main replacement contract number ISE-18T NMLL 22. Can I have a mover? Councillor McDermott. That report is now on the floor. Any comments or questions by councillors? Councillor Luberts.
Yes, thank you very much, Madam Chair. When I'm looking at the first couple of paragraphs here, there's a difference in what was budgeted and what the actual cost of the project is. And I'm just wondering if Mr. Walsh can explain a little better as to why we keep running into these differences in the budgets. At budget time, we have an estimate as to what it will cost. And it seems to me that we're going sometimes too often back to the reserves to make adjustments. And is there something that was unforeseen that caused this increase, or was it just that we miscalculated what the cost would be?
Mr. Walsh.
Thank you, Madam Chair. To the councillor, in the case of this project, it's something we didn't contemplate when the budget was set with respect to the stormwater works that would occur. Typically, when we budget a project, we know what the scope of work is, and we can estimate, to the best of our knowledge, what the prices will be. There are times when we tender the project, and it comes in due to market forces more expensive than we had contemplated. But in this case, as I stated, this is an oversight in the scope of work.
Councillor Lubberts?
Yes, thank you very much, Madam Chair. So it was the oversight on our part that we missed it? And do we need to be a little bit more careful and go into it a little bit deeper before we put together the estimates and provide it to Mr. Jansen for budget?
Mr. Walsh?
Through you, Madam Chair, again, this project was designed post-budget. It was just completed earlier this spring and late winter, and it didn't. These issues didn't arise until that time. Certainly, if we know there are issues, we will adjust the budget as the opportunity presents itself.
Councillor Lubberts?
Okay, thank you very much, Mr. Walsh.
Any other members of council? Councillor Passero?
I just wanted to double back to that last line of questioning. So this wasn't a situation where we missed something. This is a situation where we added something.
Mr. Walsh?
Through you, Madam Chair, it's 6 of one, half a dozen of another. When we looked at the project back in August, when we were setting our budgets, we didn't contemplate the works that would be required with respect to the storm system. So yes, we missed it then. As we proceeded into design, in order to accommodate the works we contemplated, we had to add something.
Okay, well that sounds better than what I heard, a couple minutes ago, which is, we missed something or, didn't know it needed to be done like that. So it's something that we explored a little bit further and decided to tack on some extra works as a part of this project. Thank you, Madam Chair.
You're welcome, Councillor. Any other councillors? Seeing none, then I will call the question. All those in favor? Motion carried. Moves us on to report number IS-18-2018, Fort Erie Accessible Specialized Transit Service known as FAST, award of service agreement for the provision, maintenance, and operation of the Specialized Transit Service. That report can be moved by Councillor Nutt. Thank you. And that report is on the floor. Any questions or comments? Councillor Passero, and then your worship.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm noting through the current contract provision that there is a savings to the municipality. And we did have a delegate here previous who spoke about the lack of any transit, but more specifically fast transits on Sundays. I know that through AODA legislation, we're required to have fast service keep up with our conventional service. I don't believe there's anything that says we can't outpace conventional service with fast. So I would just maybe look for something in the future come the next round of budgets to maybe look at expanding our fast service towards Sundays. It is an element to the population that doesn't have access to conventional. When we don't have any type of transit, it hurts most people, but when we don't have fast service, it hurts every single person that's in need of that service. So I'm hoping maybe that's something we can look towards as far as the utilization of those dollars that have come available. And maybe if Mr. Walsh has any comments to that.
Thank you, Councillor. Mr. Walsh, do you have any comments?
Through you, Madam Chair, when we opened the cost envelope and did realize there was a potential savings, it's something we have contemplated. That's about all I'd like to add at this time.
Okay. Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Your worship.
Well, that's exactly what I was going to talk about. And when the delegate was here, I did mention that it's a budget matter. And since we now are going to be realizing some savings, this could be quite opportune. So thank you.
Your worship, any other questions from councillors? I have a few questions, actually. So, Mr. Walsh, maybe you can tell me, as part of the RFP, were submissions to include track records for safety inspections and audits that may have occurred from the MOT or from their clients, such as the Niagara region, for this particular award? Was that asked during the RFP process, you know, from those proponents that delivered their submissions. And if there were any problems in the future, I don't know how we handled it in the past, but I know that there were problems with the current contractor. Are there any corrective action plans that we would have implemented for them to follow?
Madam Chair, each of the proponents that did submit on this, we had 5, as you know, they all spoke to their safety records and their inspection and safety assurances going forward. Another part of the proposal that each of them were required to discuss was how they would handle issues as they arose. The immediate goal is for the company to address the issues through their own volition. Failing that, it will be elevated up to the staff level. And although each situation is potentially different, we will handle it as they come in. We don't have an SOP to address issues due to the varying nature of issues as they roll in.
Thank you. I have a few more questions. So the current provider, which was a nonprofit organization, was charging roughly about $340,000. And I believe that the town of Fort Erie provided space locally to store their vehicles. This new contractor, from what I understand, will have to have physical space of their own in our municipality. Is that correct?
They're required to provide their own space. It's not necessary to be in the municipality. They will, as you know, they are the regional carrier for specialized transit. They'll be utilizing their existing facilities.
Okay, that's fair. And so the residents of Fort Erie then would be contacting a local number.
That's correct. They do have a local office as part of their regional contract.
Sorry, I have this. I've used the notes section on the agenda, so I'm trying to get to the next question. I apologize. So they're going to be providing 3 vehicles strictly for Fort Erie and staffed 8 hours a day, 6 days a week. And can the vehicles be directed out of town at any time for other uses, such as to supplement the region? And is there a 4th van that's going to be under consideration in the future?
So this contract under their proposal is a 3+1. So there's 3 vehicles dedicated to the town plus 1 spare in the event of a vehicle breakdown. Can a vehicle be dedicated to another part of the region? I would suspect if the caseload warrants that they can get away with 2 vehicles in town and our service will not suffer. I don't see an issue with that. But their priority, as per their proposal, is to put 3 vehicles on the road with us. We did speak in the RFP about increasing workload, and at that time we'll enter into discussions with the provider as warranted.
Okay, great. And then my last question, because there have been several complaints with respect to the current contractor, how will we audit with respect to compliance and service delivery satisfaction with our new contractor?
I believe, if I recall correctly, BTS in their proposal, and my apologies, I don't remember the details off the top of my head, but they do have a component in there to measure client satisfaction. Certainly, one of the issues we monitor are calls that come into town hall, and since the Red Cross, our current provider, has been paid to put a 3rd van on the road, which was March 1st, so it's 2.5 months now. They have had 6 trips been declined due to oversubscription, whereas before we were getting 30 a day. So to council's credit, the money spent on the third van is paying off in spades.
That's awesome. Thank you. I have no further questions. Does any other member of council, before I call the question, have any questions? No? Okay, then. I will call the question. All those in favor? That is unanimous. Next report is IS-19-2018 Winger Road Municipal Drain Hydro Culverts, filing of engineer's report as per Section 78 of the Ontario Drainage Act, RSO 1990 CD 17. Can I have a mover? Councillor Passero, that report is on the floor. Any comments or questions? Councillor Nutt?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I see that Mr. Dave Maiden is in the audience, and if Mr. Walsh would like, I'll direct this question over to him. I received a number of calls from individuals who received letters, and I know I had reached out to Mr. Maiden earlier, but I just want to have the people understand that they only got the letter because a reassessment was being done on the cost, and that cost is being borne by the utility provider and the town. Is that correct?
Through the mayor to, yes, that is correct. Engineers report, the town of Fort Erie and Canada Niagara Power are the only agencies, utilities that have been assessed for the work indicated in the new engineers report. All other properties have already been assessed under the final levy bylaw 94/2016 for the Winger Road drainage works, which did not include the installation of the hydro culverts component in the assessed values.
Do you have an approximation on how long, how much time this will work to rectify, or has the work already been done?
The work was completed in 2011.
Okay, perfect. That was the other question that I received a couple calls on. People thought that this was a new work done, but I know when I reached out to you, you had said all the work was complete, and that's why the cost was being assessed now.
That is correct. This new engineer's report gives the town the ability to assess Canadian Niagara Power.
Thank you very much. No further questions.
Thank you, Councillor. Any other comments or questions? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor?
Take the chair.
Thank you, Your Worship.
If Councillor Zanko had been here, then she could have taken the chair. But, okay, so do I have a mover for IS 20-2018, which is the award of tender for two bridge and culvert repair and replacement contracts? Councillor Nutt. Any questions or comments? Councillor Luberts.
Yes, thank you very much, Mayor Redekop. Again, I just want to, I'm seeing that there's an amendment for both bridges and culverts to be made. And then under the first that and the second that, there's an amendment. And I'm just assuming that what we're doing is we're just, instead of taking the money in the first that from Bridge 17, we're taking the money out of Bridge 16, where the project and engineering fees were initially budgeted and approved. Is that correct, Mr. Walsh?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, yes, that's correct. In this case, we're not actually incurring additional budgeted expenses. We're just moving money around.
How does, I guess, my question is, how does that happen that we were using the money out of Bridge 17 and it should have been used in Bridge 16? It seems to me, I know it's just an in and an out, but it's a lot of staff resources that has to go into the change as well. And I'm just wondering, how does that happen? Because in the second that, it happened in another project, well, I guess, would it be two projects?
Mr. Walsh.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. How does it happen? When we set the budgets, this project or this report in particular has a number of different budget years addressed, and due to the nature of the projects we're undertaking, some of them were identified in the Bridge 16 report, so that money was moved into here.
Councillor Luberts.
All right, so I guess what I'm seeing here is the initial budget and the initial budget approval was there. It's just that when the paperwork was drawn up, it got moved to the wrong project number. Is that what I'm seeing here?
Mr. Walsh?
So we're just changing it back?
In essence, yes, that's correct.
Oh, okay. All right, thank you.
Any other questions or comments? All those in favor of the recommendations? None opposed, that is carried. Councillor Butler, may I hand the chair back to you?
Thank you, Your Worship. That brings us to report number IS-21-2018, Winter Control Comparison Expenditures 2017-2018. Moved by Councillor McDermott. That report is now on the floor. Any comments or questions? Councillor Passera.
Just a very quick comment. I remember in 2015 and 2016 where we had relatively light winters, you always get the people who call you and say, well, we need to do this, we need to do that, and you've got lots of extra money left over because it was a light winter. This is the reason we don't do that. This is the reason why policy needs to override impulse, because eventually you hit that wall where Mother Nature does come back to get you, and this is that scenario. So that's the reason why those dollars we save get put away for those snowy days, and unfortunately, a lot of those snowy days in 2017. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Councillor. Any other comments or questions? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor? That motion is carried unanimously. That moves us to new business and inquiries. Does any member of council have any questions or inquiries? Councillor Nutt?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Through you to Mr. Walsh. Have a question. The rail line at East and Winger, both are closed now simultaneously. Do you know how long that replacement work or the work for the track crossing is going to take? Has that been communicated to the town?
Mr. Walsh?
Through you, Madam Chair, the work that CNR is undertaking is taking about a week per crossing.
Thank you very much. I'd also just like to extend a special thanks. I know I've raised that concern several times with the Burger Road crossing and most recently the Cider Road crossing, and I believe the Cider Road work has been completed along with the Burger Road, and I'd just like to thank you and your staff for keeping on Canadian Niagara to get that done, or Canadian National Railroad, sorry.
Any other comments or questions? Okay. That moves us to the business status report. Any questions or comments with respect to the business status report? Seeing none, then I will move the chair back to you, Your Worship.
Thank you very much, Councillor Butler. That takes us to Corporate and Community Services. Councillor Nutt, stop distracting me.
Yeah, the mayor, to answer your question, both roads are closed, but luckily all the houses are on the same side as the fire hall, so fire hall won't really need to go over those areas.
Well, that's fortunate.
Or the fire trucks. Corporate and Community Services is now open. Tonight we don't have any presentations or delegations. There are no reports, so I'll move right to new business inquiries. Are there any? Seeing none, we'll move on to the business status report for comments or questions. Seeing none, I'll close up Corporate and Community Services and pass the chair back to His Worship.
New record, Councillor Nutt. I've been timing it.
Councillor McDermott might want one of these.
New record. That takes us to scheduling of meetings. Any meetings coming up that anyone wishes to announce? We have a Transit Committee meeting on Thursday, I believe, at 3 o'clock. And that's here, I presume, in one of the committee rooms, 1 or 2. Any other meetings, Councillor Nutt?
Yes, Your Worship. Today we received an email from Ms. Galloway in planning, and there is a meeting coming up hosted by Jody McKenna of the Great Lakes Ecosystem Management Strategic Policy Branch, and that will be held at the Crystal Ridge Library on May 23rd between 1:30 PM and 3:30 PM.
Which is tomorrow.
Correct.
Okay, good to know. Councillor Luberts.
Yes, thank you very much, Mayor Redekop. And just to follow up on Councillor Nutt's announcement of the meeting, I think it's very important that we have some staff members there, and even if there's some councillors that can attend, because a lot of the discussion is going to be on the algae that's along the shorelines of Lake Erie, namely Cladophora, and other issues that we face, and what we're seeing coming out of the drains in Fort Erie and entering into our lake system and our waterways. So I think it's important that we have some representation from the town hall, and if any staff members will, or council members as well. And just for the schedule of meetings, we have an environmental advisory committee meeting on Wednesday night as well. I don't know the time and the conference room number. I've been off for 4 or 5 weeks, and but definitely on Wednesday night, we will be meeting.
Time do the meetings usually start? 5:30? Okay. If anyone needs clarification on that, they can contact the acting clerk, I'm going to guess. Okay, if there are no other meetings scheduled, Councillor Nutt, would you like to adjourn this?
Absolutely. The council and committee meeting for the town of Fort Erie hereby adjourns at 7:54 PM to reconvene in the next regular council meeting.
All those in favor? None opposed? That is carried. Thank you all.